What I would like to also bring up to your attention is that eugenics is becoming such a popular cutting-edge science, not only in England or in the United States, but actually in the whole of the Western world. It's getting a lot of attention in Germany, and we know the consequences of this, with Nazi Germany introducing first sterilization statutes after Hitler gets into power in 1933, and he models his laws on those that are being developed in California, in the state of California. So Germany is becoming very active, and German scientists in the whole Western eugenic movement. We are talking about countries in basically all European countries. That includes countries in Northern Europe, that includes countries in Southern Europe. We're talking about Italy, we're talking about Spain, we're talking about Sweden, we're talking about Poland, we're talking also about certain countries in Latin America. You know, when you look at the list of scientists that take part in the first International Eugenic Congress, when you look, that is being held in London, or when you look at the list of those scientists that are participants of the second International Eugenic Congress that is organized in the city of New York, then you see that eugenics is becoming that kind of an international science that appeals to the whole scientific community, because it proposes that kind of a vision of the future world. What is also unbelievable is the fact that despite the awareness that eugenics as science may have terrible consequences, and there is the beginning of that awareness in Europe in the 1930s, in the United States, when you look at the archives, for example, of the American Eugenics Society, you can see that a number of eugenicists endorse what is happening, for example, in Nazi Germany, the programs of sterilization, the victory of racial integrity laws, the discourse of Nordicism. They are extremely enthusiastic about this, and they are saying that Nazi Germany has the courage to do what the United States, being a very democratic country, subscribing to the Declaration of Independence and to the belief in the enlightened trust in brotherhood, doesn't have the courage to do. That enthusiasm is really troubling, and I think can serve as a kind of a cautionary tale when we think about the success of eugenics in the Western world. I think one of the turning points for people's trust in the power of the new visionary science of heredity is other months before World War II, when on the eve of the war we have the manifesto, the Geneticist Manifesto, that is being published, and in which we have the number of scientists calling themselves geneticists, endorsing a new type of science, the science of genetics, and refuting the science of eugenics. So rather than calling themselves eugenicists, they call themselves geneticists, and they are saying that we are interested in the new type of science, the science that is endorsing Mendelian laws of heredity, the laws of inheritance, however, without that racial component, that we want to reject the belief that future science that is looking into heredity, that applies the laws, Mendelian's laws of inheritance to the human society, that should be conceived with the purpose of improving the racial makeup of the future society. So just before World War II, we have scientists rejecting this. And I think it's a very important step on the way to refute eugenics. So as a result of World War II, eugenics is being rejected by the scientific community. And it is becoming the science that is shamefully shunned by the community, even though the American Eugenics Society is still operating, actually till 1972. So as late as 1972, the American Eugenics Society ceases to exist, and it is being transformed into the Society for the Study of Social Biology. So even though we have scientists rejecting that new science of heredity, eugenic ideas die hard in the world and in the Western world. At this point, I would like to address the question of a certain type of eugenic thought still may be appealing to thinkers in the contemporary world. If we treat the science of eugenics and the history of eugenics as a cautionary tale, the tale that warns us against full trust, unconditional trust in science, then we have to remember about the potential and dangerous, maybe also, consequences of the new science of genetics. The power, for example, DNA testing has to also stratify society, to divide society. We know that genetic screening can diagnose, identify genetic diseases, and thus can help us monitor them, cure them, treat them. But there is a danger that DNA testing might also be used to racial profiling, may lead to dividing people according those that are desirable with perfect bodies and those that are born with some kind of a condition, thus they are disabled. It may lead to the danger of us hoping to build another perfect society, another utopian society where everybody is fit, everybody is healthy, everybody is perfect, and thus disability is considered to be something that is not welcome. I think that another reflection that I would like to share with you is also that unconditional trust in psychometry, IQ testing, the use of statistical data, the use of statistics when we want to measure human performance, when we want to diagnose a human society. The science of eugenics is also the history of the development of the science of eugenics is also teaching us to be a little bit more skeptical with respect to the value data, statistics, measurements have when we're dealing with humankind, when we're dealing with the human beings. I think that science of eugenics tended to abuse the language of statistics, the language of psychometric tests, the language of IQ testing, and it used that to its own purpose. And I think we should keep in mind today when we apply similar techniques to measure human society in various sciences, be it the science of sociology, be it the science of economics, political science. If you want to be very rigid and very rigorous in our scientific search, we have to be at the same time on the guard, be very careful to what purpose and how we are applying our data. The history of eugenics is also telling us to be on guard against what I call racialization of culture. That is about identifying culture with a certain race or racial group. And even though, according to contemporary science, there is not such an, in light of recent developments in genetics, there's not such a thing as biological race. So, there is unanimity that race is socially constructed. Yes, we have the critical race theory, even though there is that awareness, yes, that race is not a biological thing. I think that there is still kind of a nostalgia for identifying culture with race, for identifying culture with biology, which I believe is a kind of a tricky path and dangerous path to follow. The same with talking about identity through biology, identifying identity with certain biological characteristics. I think it's a kind of a very dangerous way of thinking.